6:30. We'll call the meeting to order. Planning board meeting, there are agendas, I think, near the door if you need one. And first on every agenda is time for public comment. If you're here to say something to the board that isn't on the agenda, now would be the time. And if you wish to speak to the board about anything during the evening, please come here to the podium and speak into the microphone, because that connects to FCTV. Otherwise, the people at home won't be able to hear you. And when you do speak, please give your name and what you're speaking about. So, is there anyone who wants to make a public comment? No. Okay. Minutes. Paul, we don't have Paul.
Paul is absent tonight.
And
Okay, so I move that we delay, what's the proper term?
Table?
Table, thank you, the minutes until Paul returns.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes are tabled till we have Paul with us again. Okay, next on our agenda, we have in a row 2 approvals not required. The first one is from Paul Thierold. Thierold? Thank you. To realign the property forming 3 lots with frontage on existing ways located at 170 Hayway Road in East Falmouth. Thank you, Mr. Thierold.
My name is John Doyle, and we pronounce it Paul Theriault.
Thank you.
I guess there's some silent letters there. Does everybody have a plan, I guess? Yeah.
We all do.
Okay. So Paul owns 2 large lots out in East Falmouth between Hayway Road and Old Barnstable Road. And some of this property abuts a road that he put in through a subdivision around 2006, 2007. What we've done is take these 2 large lots and divide them into 3 lots, which conform to the frontage, the width requirement of 150 feet, and the area of 45,000 square feet. Paul's cut these out for his son and his daughter. He lives in the house there at 170. Paul, seen the father. That's Paul with his daughter and son next to him, Scott and Ashley. And I'm basically here to ask any questions you might have, because I think it's pretty cut and dry.
I agree with that. Anyone on the board with a question? Nope. Apparently not.
I
Jen,
just have a
what do you-
question.
Oh, excuse me.
The 3 lots, I see 2 and,
1, 2, 3.
oh, this is the house on it, I see. Okay, I thought, oh, there's lot 1. All right, already has a house on it. Now I get it. All set.
Jed, is there anything you wanted to add?
Other than I recommend endorsement. No.
Okay, we have no problems with any of it. Looks like very clean and presented just the way we asked. Thank you very much. Pat, could you make a motion?
I move that the board endorse the plan as presented to us without regard to buildability or zoning.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Thierold is all set. Thank you, Mr. Doyle.
Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you. It looks like a good project. Okay. Next, on the agenda, another A&R, also in good order, also difficult for me to pronounce. Samuel Pekowski, plan of land to create 2 lots, lots A and B, located this time at 390 Hatchville Road. Speaking for them is Mr. Forsythe.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. For the record, Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. We filed an approval not required application for the applicant to take 1 large lot and make it into 2, still large, but not quite as large lots. The property has frontage on Hatchville Road. It has frontage on Deep Pond. It's in zoning district AGA, but it's also in the Water Resource Overlay District. The Water Resource Overlay District requires a minimum lot size of 80,000 square feet. It increases the frontage requirement to 150 and the minimum lot width, or the so-called circles that you see on the plan, to 200. The applicant does have the benefit of just under 170,000 square feet on this land. There is a house centered on the lot, and the area of upland is just under 170,000 square feet. So with a little bit of innovation, we were able to configure both lots to have just over 81,000 square feet. The lot to the north, known as Lot B, actually curls in front of the house, but in no place is it less than 50 feet in width, but this area was necessary to create added area to create a large enough lot.
So the part marked easement is included in the 81,390 square feet?
Yes.
Okay.
And the easement is necessary because the existing house driveway and utilities, which you can also see on the plan, have been here for decades, and there'd be easements that allow them to continue to cross the lot in that area. So this meets the minimum area, frontage, and lot width size under zoning.
Question by the board. Any questions? Hearing none, I have a question. Do you foresee any problem in the future if Lot B is sold to not a relative but a stranger with that easement arrangement?
As this goes forward, since the property owner has control of all the land, he will prepare easements, and they'll be recorded and be in place prior to the sale of either lot, so it'll be already taken care of.
Jed?
No comment, other than I recommend endorsement.
Looks good. Kat?
I move an endorsement of the plan as presented to the board without regard to buildability or its compliance with zoning.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You're all set. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we come to our next issue. This is a public meeting, and we have, again, Mr. Ament and Mr. Galasso, ASC Cape Cod Holdings. Oh, no, excuse me, before that, ASCD Cape Cod Holdings, this is a site plan review, and the applicant has submitted a request to withdraw the application without prejudice. Is the applicant present? No. Okay, could we have a motion to withdraw?
I move that we accept the request to withdraw without prejudice.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now, planning board discussion and decision. This is a familiar issue that we're going to look at now. Michael Galasso, represented by Mr. Ament, site plan review application for 71-unit workforce housing building at 973 square foot restaurant at 545 Main Street. And this is, I think, our fourth time, and we had, the board is solidly in favor of this project, and therefore we had asked at our last meeting, and when we considered the project, for a positive motion that we could consider. But in the meantime, there's been a change, and we don't seem to be documented for that. Mr. Ament?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. To begin, I'd like to ask the board's indulgence. I'm without my hearing aids tonight until I get them fixed in a couple days, and I have a hard time hearing you without them. So if you have a question for me, please speak up. If I ask you to repeat it, that's why. I think I can speak all right, though. The plan has been somewhat revised, not much, but improved. So let me show you what we've got. This is a new site plan prepared by Falmouth Engineering by Mike Borselli, who's here with Mr. Galasso. And The main differences are that we've been able to rework the parking area behind the building so that there are 6 additional spaces, which is a pretty good improvement. I'll show you the spaces, one in this corner and one here, both additional spaces. There's 1 additional space here and 3 spaces here. These are all conforming spaces. The lot coverage is still less than 70%. We had previously discussed the possibility of some spaces along here, but we're not showing any. We're still able to increase the number of parking spaces by 6, which gets us up to 59 spaces. And parking being the main issue, it seems, that the board was concerned about, we've made a couple of proposals to assure that there won't be a parking problem. One, we've suggested reducing the number of seats in the restaurant from 34 to 24. It's not that we don't want to have 34 seats, and we hope we will be able to have those. But with 24 seats, we are able to reduce the parking requirements by 5. Reduction of 10 seats, 1 space for every 2 seats. In addition, we've discussed the fact that a significant portion of the residents of this mixed-use property, the residents and the occupants, will not have cars. But how do we know that? How do we assure it? Well, we can, in a sense, discriminate by, and legally, and to assure that people don't have cars, that a certain number of the people, probably in all cases by willingly and by choice because they don't need or don't have a car, but a certain number of the units will be leased on the condition that the occupants not keep a car on the premises. I suggested a formula for how to do that. And I have here a calculation example. So we're proposing 71 units, 34 of them dwelling units, 37 of them commercial accommodations units. And we've agreed that that would require 71 spaces. And if there were 34 restaurant seats, you need 17 spaces, so a total of 88 spaces. If we were to only have 24 seats, it says Sweats, that's my typo. If there were 24 seats, you'd need 12 parking spaces. And we have 59 parking spaces. So if we take the 12 away for the restaurant, that leaves 47. 47 of the units can have cars. And that means that, I think my math's wrong here too. That means that 34 of the units cannot have cars, okay? Because if we have 34 restaurant seats, we need 17 seats for the restaurant. And so, in that case, 42 units can have cars. Actually, my math was right. And that would mean 29 units cannot have cars. 29 and 42 is 71. The example above, 47 and 24 is 71. So it's a very simple
But
determination.
which are you proposing? Are you proposing 24
Well,
or 34?
in my correspondence to the town planner last Wednesday, I suggested that we simply provide a formula. That if we, that for every seat we lose from the 34, for every 2 seats, for every seat we lose, you could have, you need 2 fewer spaces, which can be used by residents. It's as simple as that. So, again, in this example, if we reduce the number of seats by 10, we get to increase the number of units that can have cars by 5. I mean, it's as simple as that. Now, the town planner would like to have a specific figure, in which case, I guess we would say, well, let's do the 24 seats and 29 units, and 24 units cannot have cars under that circumstance. We'd like the flexibility as we see how we do. We may not need to have those restaurant seats restricted, and I don't think it's so complicated to say if it turns out you aren't allocating spaces for residents, you can use them for the restaurant. The town planner said, let's have a specific figure, and if you feel that you should change it later, come back to for an administrative modification of the decision. Despite how simple it sounds, even administrative modifications take a certain amount of effort and time. We think that the operator of the facility can work with that formula pretty easily. We would come back to the board if we, and we probably will, are able to make an off-premises parking arrangement. But that I felt that the board needed to see, or the town planner needed to see, because you're supposed to approve shared parking agreements, and the bylaw indicates that. So I thought that would be a modification. But I think that if we reduce the number of restaurant seats, or we reduce the number of cars, of units that can have cars, then there can be some flexibility in how that mix of reductions works. I don't think it's all that complicated.
Could I
Happy to
comment
answer
on
questions
that?
about it, but that's what we,
Mr. Ahmet, may I comment on that? One, it's so much easier when you write it that way than the paragraph you sent us. Jed and I puzzled over that paragraph for quite a little while, trying to figure out what did he say? I mean,
Well,
we had columns of figures going.
when
So this
Jed
is better.
and
Thank
I
you.
talked, he expressed the idea that it was confusing until you figured it out.
It came through
And I'm
finally.
sorry about that, and I hope the examples help to make that clear.
It does, but that's not actually my question right now.
I would like to
Rather
also
than
show
commenting
you,
directly on this, I want to ask you if there's anything else that is undecided or incomplete as of tonight.
well, let me show you that plan again, and then I'll show you a landscape plan, which wasn't filed, as I understand it, until today. But let's look at that site plan again and other changes. On a plan that we filed last week, we showed a bus shelter here, located close to Main Street. Mr. Galasso thinks that's a good idea for encouraging people to use public transportation. A bus shelter on the lot would be an accessory structure. The zoning bylaw says that accessory structures in a front yard are only allowed by special permit from the Board of Appeals, and in no case closer than 50 feet from the street. I know Jed has told me that he's talked to the building commissioner. We don't see a way that we can have a bus shelter close to the street. I would suggest that accepting from that restriction, that setback requirement, that special permit requirement, accepting bus shelters that have been approved through site plan review ought to be a real easy fix in the zoning bylaw. So I'd suggest you add that to a list of any changes to be made, and hopefully soon. And then we can put a bus shelter back on the plan. The other change shown here is that we've located 3 bicycle, what do we call them? Storage lockers, bicycle storage lockers, and we have a picture of them. bike storage lockers. That's what they look like. I don't know if they have to come in blue, but we're able to store bikes. They'll be, as you know, both regular bicycles and electric bicycles, and they'll have storage areas. We've shown them on the plan, and I'll show you the site plan now. I'm sorry, the landscaping plan. Here's the plan. The parking is all the same as shown on the site plan, all revised. This shows the that bus shelter, which I think we may have a later plan where it's been removed from, but of course we'd remove that to be consistent with the other plan. This shows the bicycle storage locker as well. I believe that except for the small changes necessitated by the revised parking
Yeah,
layout.
there were new landscaping things at the back.
Say again?
Lot. There were new landscaping ideas at the back of the lot. Are they on the landscaping plan that
Yeah,
you
there are some
submitted?
changes there necessitated by 6 additional parking spaces. For instance, in this area, in the aisle, there was landscaping in this area. And this landscape, little island right here, was larger because we have added a parking space in that corner. This is another view of it. Now, our hope is that with this information, the board is able to close its hearing and vote. I don't know if you're ready to vote because I don't think you have a motion before you, and it's important that you have one done. Our hope is that if you cannot vote tonight, that a vote can be prepared, a motion can be prepared in the next week or so that we can look at it, comment on it, work with the planning staff to be sure it's right, and that it can be finalized and voted on and filed the week after, so voted at your meeting of July 11. Now, we think you could vote tonight, but I don't think it really makes much difference whether it's, you're still going to have to see a decision, and we still are told we need to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals anyway.
Board have any questions or comments? John?
No.
Bob?
No.
Jim?
Just a question on the bus station. One plan showed a stop, one showed it, and one doesn't. Is it included, or is it proposed? The first plan didn't have the bus, that X wasn't there. Now, this one does. I think the bus station's a good idea. But
No, we do too, but
You're
we
saying
don't
that's
think
because it has to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals?
Right.
we don't think that the Board of Appeals has the authority to approve it.
You think the planning board does, or the zoning board of appeals does?
I think possibly the planning board could under Mr. Cod, but it certainly isn't clear that Mr. Cod would overrule the zoning restriction against having an accessory structure in the front yard except as approved by the Board of Appeals by special permit and then not within 50 feet. The Mr. Cod bylaw gives you flexibility with regard to the bulk of buildings. It gives you flexibility with setbacks. Maybe the combination of those things, the setback and the bulk of buildings, means you can approve an accessory structure, but I don't know the answer to that.
May be too far for anyone to remember, but, Dunkin' Donuts in East Falmouth has a bus stop in front of it. Seacoast Shores has a bus stop just like it, and an empty lot across the street from it. Were those special permits by the ZBA?
I did the zoning work years ago for that Dunkin' Donuts, which turned out to be a pretty attractive. I don't recall whether the bus shelter was approved as part of that plan and didn't have time to check.
How did they
But
get
it's-
there if it
I
wasn't-
don't know how it was
Anyways, I think we
approved.
need a bus station, a bus stop. I'm just trying to figure out how and when it's gonna happen.
I think that by the time this building gets occupied for the proposed use, if the planning board were to go to town meeting and make it clear that we could do it, and get a zoning change, that would work.
Jim, I think in answer to your question, the bus stop had nothing to do with the Dunkin' Donuts. There were a number of bus stops that were contracted to be built, and I think Doug Brown
Oh, Doug Brown built
had the
them,
contract on that.
but whose
I
land are
think
they
it-
on? They're not even on the site?
I think that was through the Cape Cod Commission. I'm not entirely sure, but Doug would know the
It's-
history.
But it
of
looks like it's about the same size thing. I'm just wondering how we did it before. We got it done before, why
No,
can't we
they
do it
just,
now?
it had nothing to do with what we were
Okay.
permitting. They were aside from it.
We would like to have it there. If there's a way to do it, that's fine. Once there's a way to do it, I'm sure we can come back. I'm sure it will be approved and it could be built.
Well, if it isn't approved by town meeting through something we do, it could be approved by the ZBA while you're doing what you're going to do there.
I don't think the ZBA can approve an accessory structure within 50 feet of the street.
Their special permit authority doesn't let them do that?
Correct. The special permit allows accessory structures to be in a front yard by special permit, but no closer than 50 feet to the street. I have never understood the wisdom of that, since if you attach the accessory structure to a principal structure, then it can be 25 feet from the street. I have railed against that provision in the bylaw since before you were on the board, Charlotte.
So, okay.
Must be to avoid having the bus run into the people waiting for it. I had to figure out why they'd do that.
No,
All
but,
right, so we'll
no,
go-
but if we're gonna require people to use public transportation, and they gotta flag a bus that comes up and down the street, what else can you have them do?
I think everybody here agrees with you.
You can't run from the
Zoning
building, you
bylaw-
couldn't even see the bus coming. It's,
Yes, it's nonsensical, but we should make a note, it needs to be fixed. Pam, do you have, or Pat, any comments?
No, I think it's the most ridiculous, the most ridiculous thing. You want people to be able to be sheltered in the bad weather, waiting for a bus, but the bus can't stop within so many feet, which makes it onerous for people to even wait for a bus.
It does.
So I think this needs to go before town meeting, and it needs to be changed.
Pat?
And I think in our decision, I don't like the floatiness of how many parking spaces. I think we need to have a decision
yeah.
that
We
says,
have a
okay,
solid proposal,
no, I understand, but we need to have it put into the decision
indeed we do, and we will.
as a solid number.
Yeah, and if they need to come back administratively, have them come back, but have the plan, have something on the plan. They can live with that.
Absolutely, yes.
And have the plan reflect exactly what we're going to approve. Jed, did you want to comment?
Well, actually, I had a question about that. It sounds like it's going to be a 24-seat restaurant?
Yeah, I think that's what, if we have to have a set figure, let's start with the 24 for the restaurant, 24 seats. And I hope the board will be flexible when we come back and show that we could have more without a parking problem, or if we achieve some off-premises parking that the board is satisfied, that should cover that, and we won't have that restriction. I would like to suggest that your decision specifically authorize minor changes to be approved by the planning staff, and the staff can then decide what's minor and what's not, but certainly some changes ought not require the applicant to come back to the board.
No, I think that's very reasonable, given the fact that nobody's ever done this before. And you might find that 50 units are just going to be bicycles, So I think given the flexibility, giving us something concrete to vote on, given the flexibility to the staff to make any administrative changes, I think that's the way to go.
Jed, do you know enough to draft a a positive motion for us for the 11th?
One element of clarification. So with a 24-seat restaurant, you'll officially be asking for the board to reduce parking by 24 spaces. Is that correct?
Let's be sure.
Right.
Take another look at that.
And that is just for, because the board has the authority within 247.5 F2D, I believe. Yes. And I'll just read it for the record. An applicant may be granted a reduction in the residential parking requirement provided that a car-sharing program is provided and approved by the board. So you have the authority to reduce only the residential component of the project, the parking requirement for those residential units.
Not
So-
for the restaurant.
Correct, not for the restaurant and also not for the units that are not considered residential. Those would be the commercial accommodation units,
But
those
as the
37.
proposal's been made to us, we don't need that extra authority. We have the authority to approve what's been proposed.
Correct, provided that that number is accurate, which I will not.
It's 24.
24.
It's 24.
Very good.
24 would not have cars, but
There are
I'd,
other issues that we had, the completeness of the landscape plan.
So the landscape plan, just for the record, the landscape plan, we noticed in Permitize, it was uploaded later on this afternoon, so we didn't have time to print it for the board. So we'll send that off to, for referrals, just to make sure we have another set of eyes on it, to make sure it complies with the requirements. The site plan in your packets, you have a referral from our engineering division, as well as the fire department. Both of them have provided a clean bill of health, if you will, have no issues with it. And so, yes, to answer your question, I believe I have just one more question related to the bicycle component. Previous statements indicated that the bicycles might be able to be rented or would be available to residents within the building. Is that correct? Would that be in addition to the car sharing program? Would residents be able to rent a bike, if you will? Or are those just going to be lockers?
the answer is yes.
Okay. Do you happen to know how many?
I think we're providing storage for 32, but Michael can answer that better and talk about the mix of electric and other bikes. I also have never talked with Michael about it, but assume that if somebody has their own bike, they'd be able to store it there.
Right.
But
Thank you. Michael Glasso, 107 Lakeview Ave. Yes, we will be able to provide lockers for all the bikes that we're going to be provided, and plus for storage. We don't allow, because the rooms are so small, we won't be allowing any bikes within the buildings, within the rooms. We may have some storage space down in the basement if it's necessary. So we will have a combination of electric bikes and manual pedal bikes that will be available to rent by our residents. It's a program very similar that they have down in Woods Hole for Hui, for their students and stuff, so we're sort of echoing that program for our use.
Do you happen to know how many yet?
Right now, I believe we have enough space for 32 bikes in those lockers. Each one of those lockers holds 2 bikes,
Okay.
and they
so-
can be stacked.
So will there be, so it sounds like you're going to have 32 rentable bikes? Is that an accurate statement?
No, we won't have altogether 32. We will save some spaces for people who have their own bikes that they can put them in the lockers too.
Okay.
So if I had to guess right now, I'd probably say somewhere around, let's say 20.
Okay. It'd just be helpful to throw that into the decision
Yeah.
for the board. So if you,
But
if
we'll
you
pro-
can get us a number at some point before the 11th, that would be great.
Okay.
Pat,
Yeah.
I hate to be negative
4.
because I really want this to happen, but I believe I recall that there were going to be 2 rentable electric cars and also a transportation van.
Correct.
But won't they reduce the parking spaces that are provided then by 3? So there'll be actually 56 provided.
Yeah, I think, and
They
Jen
would
and I
be-
had,
they would be included in the 59 parking spaces.
right, why would they not be included? They're
No,
vehicles that
no.
are used by the people there.
Semantics, they're,
I understand, but when we're saying how many spaces have to be for the residents there to
Those
use with
vehicles
their
are
own
for the
vehicles.
residents.
For their own vehicles.
The vehicles are for the residents.
They don't own them.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Doesn't say they have to own them.
I guess I'm confused.
Yeah.
I think we've expressed that there is some flexibility here, that if you make changes in operation, you can do it administratively, but I'd encourage you to come with a set plan. These are the number of spaces, this was approved, and if we need any more, we'll come back
Well, we've just agreed to that.
and
I've
ask for
already
it.
already
Because
agreed to
we're
that.
missing numbers all over the place. I'd like to see one set of numbers, and we just say
Well, that's
yes.
fine, we've agreed to that.
Okay.
24 seats in the restaurant, but I'd like to point out that the town planner is correct that the car-sharing program allows for a reduction in the residential parking requirement. But the next sentence provides additional flexibility in the Mr. Cod bylaw. It says, and it's a separate sentence, shared parking with commercial users of the property may be allowed by the planning board. So there's some flexibility there. There will be some people who are at the restaurant, for instance, who are residents of the facility. There will be some people who work at the restaurant who are probably residents of the building. So how much flexibility? We have it. We've suggested figures. They're okay with us, but I don't think you need to be worried about whether you can approve this. And so we're talking about a reduction of 24 24 spaces, and we have 34 residential units, so you're within the bylaw.
Ready?
Well, I think Jed's memo to us adds to be specific on the number, and that's all I'm saying. Just make it specific so we don't have two different numbers you're talking about.
We've agreed to that.
And if, okay,
24
fine.
seats in the restaurant
Then we're done.
allows for a reduction of the 24 units cannot have cars.
I think we're all set on it. And another fail-safe going here. Jed's going to draft it, we're going to look at it. Mr. Galasso and Mr. Ament and whoever else is needed in his professional team will look at it, and then we will consider it again and hope that we will have a vote on the 11th. But, yes? Right, and we're asking for a positive motion. I want to thank you. In effect, you are the first people passing through Mr. Cod. So you have helped us to shake it down, to see what its strengths are, where its real weaknesses are, and what we might need to change in the future. So thank you very much, and for being so responsive to what the board asked of you. I imagine it's been very annoying. So thank you for your patience and for a good project.
I'd like to make one more request. As you know, the town officials have interpreted the Mr. Cod bylaw and what town meeting did in passing it as still requiring that we obtain a special permit from the Board of Appeals. And I know that, I think unanimously, this board doesn't necessarily agree with that, and that it was not your intent. So if we have to, and we are presuming we will, get a special permit from the Board of Appeals, I'm hoping that the planning board, and there's time later on to do this, will make its view known to the Board of Appeals. We will be appealing the building commissioner's decision that a special permit is required. At the same time as we apply for that special permit, so as not to waste time, and see if the Board of Appeals doesn't agree that the language in the bylaw saying that the planning board shall be the sole permit granting authority under Mr. Cod, see if the Board of Appeals doesn't agree. But we definitely would like the robust support of the planning board in that, and then if we need the special permit, for the granting of that special permit. It's a little unclear what the Board of Appeals' role will be, where the planning board, under site plan review, has already reduced the parking requirements, allowed for a setback reduction for parking. We're dealing with a non-conforming building, and the Mr. Cod bylaw specifically says that the planning board can allow alterations to non-conforming buildings. And here, we're going to go to the Board of Appeals, which normally considers all of those issues. And we're hoping we get a good result, but we're asking the Board of Appeals to, and they may feel that they have to cover the same ground. And we have to make sure to apply in ways that they could reduce the parking, for instance, because it's not clear what their role is in this.
Well, we also hope to be petitioning town meeting to make that change, to make it very clear that that was our intention, and to see if they continue to agree with us.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yeah.
you may want to take public comment. Folks may be here to provide comment about the project, so you may want to just allow for
Oh,
that.
sure, it's listed as a discussion and decision, but I'd be happy to hear from you. If you want to speak on this, go ahead.
Thank you. I have a copy.
Dangerous.
You have to come here? Yeah, please.
Create a new precedent. Okay, that's what you're doing.
Yeah, it's okay.
I think we should talk about it sometime.
Okay. Yes?
Ready? Okay. My name is Maureen Lipscoonmaker, and I'm one of the managing trustees for Pondview Condominiums, which is directly across from the proposal. And with me is also one of the owners, Bill Enos, and we have quite a few of the other owners and trustees here. I have a letter that we wanted to present to you. We're going to be meeting this week with the association's legal department to give you more of a formal petition of some of our objections to this.
You're aware that we are opposed to approve this. You know that, right?
Yes.
And it's unusual that you then would speak afterwards. So you will be the only person speaking on this, and you should be aware that it really won't change our minds. I just hope you know that.
I don't know how to quite take that. I would say that I think that you should always have an open mind to hear everyone else who lives in this town and who has an interest in
Well,
that.
it's out of order. You're out of order. The
How is
time
that
for
out of order?
Well, because the time for a public hearing is over. Tonight was for our discussion and decision. It wasn't advertised as a hearing. So there was no reason particularly to think that you would be speaking. It was
So
a
what
time
is
for
the
us
avenue
to-
that people who have some concerns, how they can present them effectively for you before your vote on the 11th?
And excuse me, Bill Enos, I have been to a couple of these
Yes, and you have already spoken. You have already spoken.
I wasn't able to get in touch with everyone here, and this is, this directly affects us, and also directly affects the community, that I don't think the whole community is aware of what's really transpiring here.
We did our best to let the whole community know.
Well,
We have heard this and allowed for public speaking on three or four meetings, three at least.
At least.
So
this is my third meeting.
Yes,
I
well,
wasn't
it's been
aware
our
of the
fourth,
knowledge.
and we always begin with a public hearing. So it's at least three hearings when people who are affected by it had been notified and had an opportunity to speak. So
Well,
that
my
your
question is-
opportunity has passed.
Yes, excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt you. My question is, it sounds like you're not doing a vote till the 11th. So why is it that we're prohibited to at least read our concerns as members of the town and people who have a vested interest? Why are we not able to speak that? You're not voting until the 11th.
Because that's true, you and you alone are at the podium
Okay.
and are going to speak, but nobody else on this issue is going to speak, and I wanted you to understand that it's out of order, that it's very unusual, and that I know that you're concerned and that you don't like our decision. So it's an unusual opportunity that you have, but I want you to know that it won't change our minds. And I want the people who've actually followed the rules and presented their material to us don't have to be concerned about that. Jim?
I'm really concerned about this. This is way out of order as far as I'm concerned. I think it's a dangerous precedent, that it would continue, that if we start going from hearings to discussions and back to hearings and open up for more discussion and more discussion, instead of smoothing out our permitting process, we've just stretched that out as long as we possibly can. this should be treated no more than that we let somebody get up and speak at the beginning of the meeting and say, we're not gonna discuss it at all, but we'll give you a chance to read it out loud. But other than that, if we enter into discussion on this,
We're not going to.
okay, I'm just worried about, it sounds like they're planning on having a debate with us.
No,
I
it's
think
not
the
a debate.
debate's
We would appreciate just being able to read our statement, and then we will be submitting something to the planning board from our legal representation.
Just like an applicant has to do everything on time, so does the opposition. If an applicant came in with things 2 weeks later and it's already saying, but I want to make already changes.
We don't call them the opposition, we call them the abutters.
What about it? But I
Fellow
don't think that's
town,
understanding.
town people, that's what we are. We're not
No, but-
opposition. We're
We're all
fellow
townspeople.
townspeople who vote for everything that goes on in the town. And we're just
think by
asking to read our
definition it's out of order.
statement.
You've
Yes.
used that term, I'm going to be
It
quiet
is out
after
of
that.
order.
So can we read our statement or not?
Any other objections from the board on hearing the statement? Understanding that it doesn't change things? Please go ahead.
Okay. To whom it may concern, the majority, if not all, of the trustees and owners of Pondview Park condominiums are hereby officially informing the Falmouth Planning Board that they are in strong opposition to the current proposal of Michael Galasso's site plan review application for a 71-unit workforce housing building with a 973 square foot restaurant located at 545 Main Street, Falmouth. The trustees are in the process of meeting with the association's legal representation to further review this proposal as abutters to the property and proposal. Below are some concerns and questions that have already been voiced by some of the trustees and owners, and undoubtedly there are many more. With the advent and popularity of short-term rental companies, we have already seen a huge chunk of our housing stock transformed from year-round residents to weekly and nightly rentals. Without question, this has changed the community and made it significantly harder for families to find and afford homes. This property presents an important opportunity for the community, but the current proposal seems to only exacerbate that problem. Population decline could be a major problem for our town. We need more young families moving here, living here year-round, and we should also be catering to them as well. This is effectively, in our opinion, dorm living for adults disguised as an affordable housing project. This is not yet a proven concept, although a very exciting concept. It is not a proven concept in our community, especially on such a large scale. Do we really want to make this gamble on our Main Street? Should this not be something that is more evenly distributed throughout our town to mitigate potential strain on our already overtaxed infrastructure and roadways downtown? If this were to be approved, what will the developer's responsibility be to ensure that the occupants of the building are in fact local and seasonal workers contributing to the town's workforce? How will we, as abutters, be assured that these month-to-month tenancies will in fact strengthen the local community and not detract from it? More specifically, what are the ongoing legal requirements for occupancy of this project after this developer has built and potentially sold the property? How does the town plan to enforce such legal requirements? What penalties or consequences will exist if the owner-developer does not abide by these requirements? How will this be taxed? We would like to ensure that this project is not using an affordable housing label to evade the hoteling tax usually levied on property owners who operate short-term rentals. By adding such density without sufficient parking, we can expect an additional strain on the local means of public transit. What is the town going to gain to offset this added strain and ultimate expense? The public realm should see improvements such as public access for shared bikes, bus stop, a separate parking lane for ride-sharing vehicles, so as to help reduce the backup of traffic, which is sure to occur directly in front of this proposed development. And as listening to what was said, there is a lot of questions as to what the numbers were, what the residents, how many are going to do it, and that leaves us very uncomfortable as to going forward, who will be monitoring that, who will be ensuring that. So I thank you for allowing us to read this. If you could answer for me, because I'm not familiar, what would be the process that, as we finalize a more formal statement of any of our concerns with our lawyers this week, who do we present that to? Yourself before the 11th, or do we wait until you open it up on the 11th and do that? What would be that process? I would appreciate knowing that.
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't believe there is a process for adding to it at this point in what we're doing. Is there, Jed?
Well, so for clarity's sake, you're correct, the public hearing has been closed on the special permit request. However, your public meeting is still an open one on site plan review. That is closed once you read a decision into the record. So technically, you still have an open discussion. Now, that being said, the agenda item did clarify that it's a planning board discussion, possible decision, right? So it is up to the board to decide whether or not you want to hear public comment. Until such time of the 11th, I would think that an abutter or anyone could submit something to the planning department into the file, and it would become part of the record.
Just like correspondence.
Just like
We continue to
correspondence.
accept correspondence along these issues all the way up.
Yep.
And they go into our file and we read it.
Correct.
Right. And so if you could just tell me where I would send that, I would
You would
appreciate.
send it to the planning department at Town Hall, care of the planning department, and we would know about it, and we would see it, would get a copy of it. You know, I think it's interesting, because you've raised some good questions, and as I said earlier, differently, this is the first time through with this particular new bylaw, and for this particular kind of a project. So those are good questions. It's good to have them here and raised here, and I'm glad it will be part of the record. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing us to speak.
Okay. Do we need to close this part? I don't think so. I think
I
we're
would,
just,
I would just say that I've communicated with the applicant. They're going to request an extension of your decision deadline. As you may know, it is the 30th was the last time, and that expires in 3 days. So they're going to, I believe, submit a request for that extension deadline. Perhaps they could do so orally this evening, and you could vote it, because we don't have it in writing as of today. So within 3 days, it would expire. If the applicant would be willing to do that tonight, I think it would help.
Bob, could you hear that? Yes.
I heard enough of it. Thank you. While we're all here, I'll be happy to write out a request for an extension of time to make a decision on site plan review. And you'll have that in about 1 minute, and you can vote on it.
Would you like to make a motion?
I will make a motion that we accept the applicant's request for an extension of the deadline of the site plan review and the special permit to July. Do you want to go for the 11th, or do you want to go a little further, Bob?
Well, the decision needs to be filed sometime after the 11th, so if we could
July
make it the
30th.
13th, whatever,
We could say Friday, the 14th. Does
sure,
that work?
So July 14th.
14th?
yes.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're done with that for tonight. Thank you all very much.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Conversion of dwelling discussion. We received 3 proposed changes that would go to town meeting, I assume, in November. Did you have time to look at them and think about them? They match, I think, what we said we wanted to see for tonight. Jim, this is initiated with you. Do you want to comment?
Well, I thought I read them. They're talking about here.
Yeah.
It says there are no additional rooms, it also talks about not making changes to it. I thought we were going to allow some changes to the sign.
Oh, it's 10%.
Right.
Okay, 10%, all right.
Yeah, conversion will not increase the gross floor area of the dwelling more than 10%.
Oh, more than 10%, okay,
For some reason, they're all stated negatively.
all right. See, yeah, I stopped when I said, I
Oh.
didn't finish
Yeah.
reading it.
And they're all identical, so if you like one, you like them all. And because it's in a matrix, it needs to be repeated. Jed, if I could comment, the first one is, I agree with the idea is fine. But the way it's being stated is particularly a tongue, it's just a mind bender. Why does it not say, the dwelling has been in existence for a minimum of 10 years as of the date of the special permit application?
Okay, so it's fine to change that, yeah.
Yeah, would you please? I mean, there's no need to make it practically a double negative.
And I think the bedrooms is wrong, too. I don't believe we have any say, and it's a Board of Health issue for the bedrooms. If they were to improve the septic system, to incorporate more bedrooms, they should be able to put more bedrooms in it. Or if they're on the sewer, they should be able to do it. Do we really get involved in the bedrooms? Isn't that a Board of Health issue?
Well, and the standard is may be converted to not more than 4 dwelling units.
Yeah,
So everything in black was pre-existing language.
Right, but
Anything in red is new.
number 5 is what I'm
number 5
talking
is
about.
new.
Number 5.
No
okay.
additional bedrooms above the number in existence.
Oh, okay, so you're in the business district
Yeah.
one.
Oh,
Gotcha.
I see, there's one for every district.
Yes,
Right.
yes. Yeah. Plus, there's also,
Oh, God.
Yeah, but they're the same for them all.
Well, if they're the same, okay. Well,
So they're sort of.
what's the problem with additional bedrooms, if in fact the septic system approves it?
so the only reason that we did it that way is because the single residence district had it already in there. And so that was going to be a discussion for the board. Do you want to limit, similar to the way it was limited in the single residence district, in the public use and in the business districts?
What do you guys think about just letting the Board of Health deal with that issue instead of us?
I think that's a great idea.
I prefer it.
We're also trying to figure out
Because
why.
there is
the-
some kind of crazy formula I think we'd have a hard time dealing with, okay? If you understand Title V.
Right.
As you get to number of bedrooms, they start measuring the square footage of the building, multiply it by this. It goes into a huge complicated formula that I don't want to even think about. If the Board of Health says it's okay, is what I'd like to leave it with that way and not get into required bedrooms. Because if you have a big septic system, the requirement for 110 gallons, it changes. You don't need as many, you don't need as much flow or leaching for like a 7 or an 8-bedroom house. It's not linear. It doesn't go, it doesn't, it curves.
Yeah.
And I think we should leave that all with the Board of Health.
So are you also suggesting that that language be removed from the single residence district?
I think it should be in all of them, yeah.
Not be in any of them.
Sorry,
Not, yeah, gone.
okay.
That I believe that anything to do with the septic systems is a Board of Health issue. If they can pass it, they're all set.
Okay.
So strike 5 in business district. Let's just look at them one at a time.
I didn't realize they were one for each district, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
so- yeah, we-
Public use, yeah, and strike it for the public use. And single resident,
Single residence, I think, is,
right, you'd strike it there also where it's called E rather than 5.
right. Now, we can also do some research on why that language was in there to begin with. I don't know if anyone on the board knows
What
anything
language?
about that. So in the single residence district, letter E, it says there are no additional bedrooms above the number in existence. That language currently exists in your bylaw today.
Why is it not here then?
It is. It's in
Looking
black.
at the single residence,
Yep. So when you look at letter E,
E.
the letters after E are in black. That denotes language that's already there.
Yes, but it's not about bedrooms. E is about home occupations and borders, and G is about water resource protection overlay and so forth, minimum lot size. It's not about bedrooms.
Okay, so in
Oh,
number,
wait, there's something on the back,
Two.
yeah, number
And
one
it's
and
not-
number,
and it's in black and intended to remain.
right. So if you're gonna strike it from public use and business, the question is, do you also wanna strike it from single residence? And does anyone know why that language was in there to begin with? My guess is that they didn't want these new structures to have more than what was currently in place. Meaning, like, if you're converting a 4-bedroom house into 4 units. I'm not sure that I'm making myself clear, but you're not expanding the number of bedrooms in this new conversion.
Just
So
the
the-
number of bathrooms.
Says there are no additional bedrooms above the number in existence.
How about if they just met site plan approval for the number of bedrooms that they're providing the right parking for it, and the Board of Health did the septic system, and keeping it simple right now, because that's how we look at it. Instead of saying no, because you don't want to close them out if they find a way to make an extra unit, if you could put a bedroom in it and make it
I
work.
can see why it might be there, so you don't slap a dividing wall into every bedroom
Right.
and wind up with double the number of bedrooms.
Well, they would
Bingo.
have to have Board of Health approval to do that, though. They can't just go ahead
Well,
and,
why not just go ahead and say it? Why not leave it there? Here, it's this one.
yeah, I see it.
This is the one, okay, I didn't see it till just now, and why not just leave it? It's only in single residence districts. Turn them into a rooming house apparently is not a concern anywhere else.
So,
We're- We're supposed to be encouraging developing additional units. And a
Except-
unit's
But
additional
not
unit
crowding more
needs,
people into a unit.
Right.
Crowding more people into a single unit is different from developing more units, very different, in fact.
Well, you need to have a bathroom in each unit, which is a big issue.
So
Yeah,
here would be a unit,
A
here is a
boarding house would
unit,
have a community.
has the right number, that has a bathroom, and now you're saying in a single residence district, you cannot take the bedrooms in that unit and divide them in half or more.
I think the no boarding house is clear. You can't do that. Because right now, I don't know if you guys know it, but any person can have up to 6 boarders without, in their house right now.
Right, it's in the bylaw
And
now,
yeah, they can share, and sharing one bath.
but it doesn't
It's
tell them.
allowed. So, but we should not have boarding houses in these converted uses. I'm agreeing on that. But I think if they can find a way to get an extra unit by getting an extra bedroom in someplace, and it meets the Board of Health requirements, and they have appropriate parking for it, we should let them do it. That's the
Not
whole.
without a bathroom. Not without a
Wait a
bathroom.
second.
and it-
Every unit has to have a
unit.
bathroom. You
They,
can't,
they can have more than 4 units anyway. That's still part of everything.
right.
4
so it's
units
not-
would require 4
I'm
bathrooms.
not saying without a bathroom.
And you
No,
cannot
no, I'm
exceed
just saying, I want to
gross
make
That
that
doesn't matter.
very,
You have, of course you have to have a bathroom.
I want to make that very clear.
No, I don't think you have to worry about it. It's like, I think there's 2 things you have to have a unit. You gotta have a stove, and you gotta have a bathroom.
Okay, then I'm okay.
No, I'm just saying that the Board of Health we should do site plan review for parking and landscaping, and the Board of Health should do septic system.
Absolutely.
I think Jed has a point. We don't actually know what thinking went into that.
right.
And until we do, we either should wait and rethink it then, or just tell him, find out what it is, or leave it in there. Just leave it there. It's doing no harm that we know of.
Right, and maybe we can do some research with the zoning board of appeals as to go back further than just a few years to figure out, has this precluded people from converting? Because a dwelling unit, as you know, can contain multiple bedrooms.
But think about this, this could be a big old mansion.
Yeah.
And have a giant living room or a ballroom in it. And somebody says, I can cut this up and make that into 3 bedrooms, and my septic system still works. Or I just expand my septic system and make it, but we're still only 4 units with 4 bathrooms at least. But I think when you say we can't do it, it's just adding restrictions that I believe is unnecessary. I mean, there's some big old houses that have giant rooms that they don't need them anymore. And those giant rooms could be made into a kitchen and 2 bedrooms real easy.
I mean, it could be parking,
It needs to be parking and sewer, the things
yeah.
that we should regulate. And I believe we should do the parking, and I believe the Board of Health should do the septic system.
So
You might
just-
want to bring the formula for the difference between a 5-bedroom and a 7-bedroom house, what the gallons per day flow is, and show everybody the formula and how it works, because it's not linear, and it's not something we really should get
I think there
into.
are other concerns in a neighborhood. This
Right.
mansion of yours that you're discussing, the hypothetical ballroom in the mansion, they have neighbors, and they do not want suddenly to go from a neighborhood of single-family homes to a neighborhood where sitting in the middle of the neighborhood, there is, in effect, a tenement that has got up to
okay.
20 people in it, because
Okay,
you
but
allowed them to
let's say you had this
subdivide.
house, we have this big house, and it's 4,000 square feet and only has 4 bedrooms.
Yep,
They want to make it into 4 units, they all be 1-bedroom units.
John
Is that
is laugh-
practical? Is that practical, is my question. I don't think it's practical.
I don't either.
I believe that's exactly what this bylaw's trying to get over, is the fact that people don't want the additional units in. And we're giving them the reason to stop them instead of the reason for having them.
In a single resident district, we're not doing that.
90% of our town is single-family residence
Yeah.
district, absolutely. Everything's single-family, there's very little, there's very few houses in business districts. There's very few houses in, I guess agriculture is the only place where we overflow, where there's a lot of residential uses in agricultural districts, but I don't think there's that many single-family homes in business districts anywhere.
So your table, it may be difficult to follow, but the tables that I gave to you, there's a blue, a purple, and a green. The blue represents the number of 1, 2, and 3 family structures currently in existence in each one of the zoning districts. So to Jim's point, yes, there are very few structures in the business district and the public use district. Now, the 3 categories are based on years. So the blue is, this was built before 2013, purple is before 2003, and green is before 1993. So obviously your numbers increase. But I guess the point is, you're likely not affecting too many structures in the business and public use district by this restriction, or conversely, you're opening up a lot of opportunity in the single residence districts, because you're roughly 2,800 structures, just one-family structures that are over 2,500 square feet in the single residence and the general use districts. So that could be why they added, or it's likely why they added that restriction, that there's no additional bedrooms to not overload a neighborhood.
Are these numbers cumulative? Can you add them, the one-family ones that are in the blue zone, built before 2013, the most recently built?
Yep.
Can you add that 2916 to 2556 and to 1972 to get the total available?
Say that one more time.
Okay, if you want to know overall how many will be available, do you add the totals to one another? So that you add the 2009-16 to 2005-56 and 1,972 to
No.
get the total of structures available?
No.
No.
No, the blue incorporates everything before 2013. So that's your highest number.
So built between 2003 and 2013, and those 10 years is the difference between 2916 and 2556.
Charlotte, I sat down, I did a little bit of calculation.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
I
Help me.
didn't take out the business, because they're such an inconsequential number. But I'm looking at the total number from 1993, and the total number that would be available if we did 2013. And what you're looking at is the difference of 952 more buildings that we would
So what is
allow
the
to be
difference
converted.
between the two numbers?
952.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay, and then if you were going back to the current restriction, I don't know, because that's another, 15 years or something. And so one could,
1980, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So one could extrapolate that there's going to be at least a little over 1,000 that could be converted if we change the date. And if we keep rolling forward, that every 10 years, I mean, it's not every 10
Yeah.
years, it's,
You're adding
you
more
know, then we're
possibilities.
adding more possibilities.
Right,
We've seen a lot of very large houses built in the last, say, 5 or 10 years, where they've bought smaller houses and they've knocked them down or added
Yeah.
greatly to them. And so one can imagine that that adds maybe a little bit more incrementally when that 10 years passes
Right.
and they become eligible for this conversion. And so if I had my guess as to why the language is in there, but it's just purely a guess, is people in this town wanted to keep residential areas residential.
Yeah.
They didn't want.
They didn't want multifamily. It was,
Correct.
that language is here to prevent exactly what we're trying to do, is my point.
Yeah, but I,
You want to know where it came from? Because they didn't want them.
right, they didn't
Period.
want them.
You think they want them now?
Well, we're trying, maybe not, but that's the whole idea. If we're trying to produce more housing on the same amount of lots we have, the way to do it is convert them. But to put this restriction in, why bother? Let's just not do it. If you have to keep the same amount of bedrooms, in order to have a big house with 4 two-bedroom units, they'd have to have at least 8 bedrooms now to be converted. Who builds an 8-bedroom house?
Nobody anymore.
Right.
No. I mean, it's not practical. I mean, I understand why it's there,
Nobody.
but I believe that language was designed specifically to prohibit from what we're trying to accomplish, and to leave it in would be counterproductive. I think that the Board of Health is the way to go. They have all kinds of formulas, and where we can enforce it is site plan review and landscaping, and that's really where our purview is. And that's
Do
my,
conversions come here for site planning?
well, are we?
This is all going to the ZBA.
Technically, it would be a ZBA
Totally
special
to the
permit.
ZBA.
Well, no, but they'd still, somebody would still take a look at how they're gonna do the parking.
Yep.
And
Yep.
Maybe
design
not
review.
here. And design, and the layout of the building, they'd still be looked at. And the neighbors would still comment, and the landscaping, trees, and buffers, and all the things that we normally do, we as a town, not necessarily this board, will get done. But I think if you say you can't add any more bedrooms, you're really handicapping the bylaw big time.
Okay.
That's my opinion, and, whatever.
No, I think that's true.
It is true.
And what I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to picture, I think in order to make it work, maybe we should bring a picture of one of these houses that's been done in, and I'm visualizing some of these big old houses where I saw the conversion done. And I know they had to be, in order to have 4 two-bedroom houses, they would have had to have 8 bedrooms, and very few houses have 8 bedrooms.
That's true.
So what we can do is we can see if we can work with the ZBA. I know we said this last time and I forgot, but get examples of how it worked for previous conversions to figure out what sort of obstacles they ran into, if any. So we can give the board a little bit more information there.
But you also have to work with the building code that has restrictions.
Right.
So I guess I'm coming at it from the other side, Jim, where we have talked on this board, although it hasn't gone anywhere yet, but the select board has also talked about finding some way to regulate short-term rentals. And we're creating situations that would really lend themselves to short-term rentals here.
I agreed, but that's not what we're doing.
Well, I think we should watch what one hand is doing when the other hand is moving.
If you're concerned about short-term rentals, you probably don't want to be adding a lot more units, because that would lend them to be rented out. And even though they could be long-term, they could just as easily be short-term. And if you're trying to prevent it by restricting the amount of units you build, let's not waste time with this bylaw, just forget about it. So you don't want any more units because you're worried about short-term rentals. Control the short-term rentals with some other bylaw, but not structurally, is what I'm saying.
Well, here, okay, this is like a middle ground, because here we're saying, we would leave in the bedroom requirement in the single-family area, which, as you point out, is the biggest part of town, but allow it in the other areas. What about that?
I think,
Because what we're trying to do is increase the density
I think
in
you have a problem and you're using the wrong tool to solve it. And I think that
every
unit is
tool
gonna cut
that
that.
comes to hand.
If it's more important to control the short-term rentals and Airbnbs than it is provide housing, then let's go ahead and do it your way, period.
No.
I don't think it is. I think
Okay,
it's,
first of all, there are 7 of us, so it wouldn't be just you and me. And
Sorry.
2,
you're right. I
Right.
didn't mean to make it just you.
yeah, very personal, and,
Sorry about that. My apologies.
okay. Just saying.
I thought we're just trying to create more units, and I'm trying to take barriers down and not put them up.
I think we're trying to create greater density in certain parts of town, but not in all parts of town. That's what I think we're trying to do. In my mind, that's what
So you
we've
want
been
to
doing
protect
so
the
far
single-family residents from
tonight.
that.
Yeah,
I think you're eliminating 90% of the potential places where these can
okay,
happen.
so now our positions are clear. Let's hear
Yep,
from
I
the
hear
other
you.
board members.
No, I understand.
Okay, I think the accessory apartment bylaw has been pretty successful. I wonder how many people would have, if they have a larger house, say a colonial, 3,000 square foot colonial, would have just split it in half, made two equal-sized units, a duplex, you know. Every time you say duplex, everybody thinks of the thing, that ugly-looking thing with the two
Yeah.
units on the, not all duplexes are like that. I mean, a duplex just means two units. So let's get that clear. So we have a lot of these big houses on big lots. If we allowed people to just split a unit in half, say, 50-50, and so it becomes a two-family and not a three-family or four units. And you could determine it by the size of the house, the size of the lot, the septic system, and only allow it, because you go through a lot of these neighborhoods and you see these big old colonials and other houses, and you say, geez, you could have two families living on that property. You know, there's a lot of space there for parking and everything else. So I think that might be less onerous to people in a neighborhood if Joe down the street decides, okay, he's not, doesn't have to be for a mother-in-law or somebody, but he wants to turn it into a two-family. And rent it out to somebody, and maybe it's at an affordable price, maybe not, based on the square footage and the number of bedrooms. But I think, I just keep going back to how a lot of people, their first house was a two-family house. And that was a lot of first-time home buyers, young couples that would buy a two-family house. They lived on one floor, rented out the second, and that's how they were able to make ends meet. And we've denied that opportunity to young people on the Cape because we do not allow that. You gotta buy a single house on a single lot.
Well, but we're looking now at this, how would, okay, take your thought and apply it to the language of the single residence district that we're talking about. So therefore, what would you be in favor of? This is saying converted into not more than 4 dwelling units, so certainly it allows 2. And whether or not you want to restrict the number of bedrooms there.
But look at if you just take your,
Well, maybe
Paper,
Bob has an answer.
No, I
no,
don't.
I want you to look at something. Fold your paper up like this and cover all the single-family residents over like this, and only look at what you're restricting it to, and really see how many units you're talking about. Why, there's nothing. I mean, Adam, it's literally nothing. You stopped the whole thing.
That's why I ignored it when I added the
Right.
totals.
No,
But-
see,
but-
Charlotte? See, if
No,
you-
I see what you're doing.
If you want to take this table, and these are all residential units, right? One's general residential,
but-
so.
But I think that you've gone to an extreme, because this isn't to say they can't do anything. It's to say they can have, maybe converted into not more than 4 dwelling units,
Okay,
but there are no additional bedrooms above the number in existence as of some date.
all right.
So they can have 4 in the ones that
But they'd
you've
have to have at
covered
least,
up.
they'd have to have at least 4 bedrooms now. And if they had 4, they'd all be 4 one-bedrooms.
Right.
I think you gotta be practical.
I'd like to put another thought in here. And that is what Bob's been getting at, and he said it multiple times. And you read this also about young families that start out and they buy a duplex.
I did it. I
And
know just
that's-
what he's talking
That's
about.
how they afford it. Maybe we're looking at this a little bit wrong. To increase the amount of affordable housing here in town, maybe we should be allowing duplexing. So that some of these larger houses, as Bob is describing, a young couple could buy it and convert it into a duplex that would help them buy it.
They can do
10 years
that
old,
I
that's
know
what
they
this.
can do it, but
with this.
what gives me a little bit of heartburn is that so many of these houses are on smaller lots, and if we have 4 bedrooms and we say, okay, they can each do a 1-bedroom, and what we were talking about before too is maybe an efficiency apartment in them that they could sell. Maybe that we're asking a little bit too much for the town to stomach in the first bite.
See, one of the reasons we set the ADU at 40% was to prevent duplexes. And I think.
That was particularly to get it approved, because there
Oh,
were
I
a member
know.
of our
Oh, I
board
know.
that didn't want duplexes, so
I
we
know.
came up with this formula
But I
that
think-
prevented
Right.
it.
But I think we just go with a percentage and not the number of bedrooms, but a percentage of the total floor area of the house.
Okay,
What would that look like?
So it'd be 50% if you're gonna split a house in two.
Right.
First, either side by side or up and down.
So you don't want to allow up to 4 dwelling units?
Well, it hasn't been selling, so why do we
Yeah.
wanna push something that isn't selling?
How,
And then, once you do that, you're also into the sprinkler world, which is a
It hasn't been
vast.
selling because it's been limited to things built before 1980.
That
That's
too.
what got us going on this. So lift that restriction and allow another 40 years' worth of housing to fit, is it another 40 years' worth of housing to fit into it? So we're doing that,
Yeah,
but we seem to be keeping the up to 4 dwelling units. So not only can you have a duplex in your neighborhood right next to you, you can now have a 4-family
right. And how's that gonna fly in town meeting?
badly,
yes, you're right.
really
It won't
badly.
fly. We're duplexing.
Du-
I think
Is
they found
more
that the
palatable.
ADUs, they're not choking on.
Right.
Jim, you may have some idea, oh, I'm sorry, John.
That's all right, go ahead.
I just want to point out this.
Wait,
I
let's give
just-
everyone a chance.
I just want to know, you're in real estate, how many people look for 1-bedroom dwelling units?
Well, they don't really exist. So to have people looking for things that don't exist is a hard question to answer.
Well, I mean, it just, I'm sorry, but it just seems to me,
Apartments, only in the business district. We have a ton of 1-bedrooms all downtown. Lots of them. That's the only place I know where they exist.
I think there is a far greater cry for 2-bedroom apartments than there are for a 1-bedroom apartment.
Absolutely.
And so I don't want, and the committee's talked about this, I don't want to go down the road of looking at 1-bedroom dwelling units when people don't want that, you
We had
know?
one applicant for the Habitat one right over in Glenwood.
I'm sorry?
We had one applicant for that
One
unit.
bedroom.
Yeah, so that
It's a 1-bedroom.
probably tells you something. But I mean, I think if we're really going to look at doing this conversion, then we look at converting to 2 units, 2 bedrooms each, within that 4-bedroom home, to convert to 2 2-bedroom units within that. And I think that would provide far greater availability for affordable housing for young families that we're looking to bring into town.
John, what did you want to say?
The existing bylaw that we have, Jed, do you know how many times it's been used?
I don't, but I can find out. And I'm assuming since it was approved at town
Exactly.
meeting. Okay, we can find that out.
I know 3.
We know within the last 10 years or so, not many, right? So it's been used sparingly, is what we understand from ZBA, but we can get a hard number.
The point I'm making is maybe we're just wasting our time here. You can have 4 boarders anyway. You can have the sober house next door to you with unlimited.
Yep,
There's all kinds of things you can have happen to you next door to you.
that's true.
We really should plan ahead to get ahead. But I'd like to find out how many times it's been. If it's only been used a few times, there's a reason why.
Right. Well, and perhaps you could phase this, right? You could split it into 2 phases. You could say the first phase, you're just gonna remove the date, or you're gonna change the date to allow for more units to be eligible. And you can make the language consistent, right? So just clean up the language, just moderate changes. See how that goes. See if that makes a change. If it doesn't make any change, then you can come back and maybe you can investigate making some more aggressive changes to the bylaw to perhaps invite some more
You know, to move it ahead, I'd withdraw my objection to leaving the single-family change, because if we put that in, it's not gonna happen. So that effectively kills the whole idea. I think we should go ahead, I like Jed's idea, maybe only put, keep the bedrooms capped as what they are, what they were, and maybe just a little modest increase, less than 10%, and stop there, see how many of them they have, and come back. Now I know why this conversion was ever dealt with before. It's really hard.
It
It's
is,
a very, very difficult, everybody has a good reason why not to do it.
right.
I
John?
agree to just move it forward, move the date forward.
I think that's a
I-
better
I
idea.
also think that what Bob's been talking about, we should take this issue up.
Well, it already fills into this issue.
Duplexes, take up duplexes.
But this makes, that covers this, because you can do that with this bylaw. You can make a duplex right
But in
away.
order to
If
get
you
it
got a
past
vacant
town
lot,
meeting,
you
you
wanna
have to
build a
change the
duplex.
bylaw.
No, you'd have to build it and wait 10 years.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying.
Oh, I see, and you want to zone areas for
Let's
duplexes.
just not push everything 10, 15, 20 years down the road. We're here today.
Right,
Let's
Don't
try
make
to
'em
make,
all
let's try to
convert-
make a difference, and if the town doesn't like it, then it won't get voted in.
yeah, don't make them all conversions, is what you're saying.
Right.
He wants them to be built
I don't
right,
think-
right from the
I don't,
beginning.
I
That's
don't think the
entirely different.
conversion works very well.
Okay,
So, but think about this, I just want to make this, if in fact, you go by that and you want to build one, and you go in and now you design a septic system that can handle the 8 bedrooms, and you have a big enough lot to put in the parking, you could put in 2 4-bedroom units and build it.
Yeah. We just approved, how many
That's
lots?
exactly what I'm talking about. It's another way around, it's accomplishing the same thing.
if you could ever get it past town meeting, right.
And we just approved how many lots tonight that can only have a single-family home on it? Whereas
Correct.
if we had allowed duplexes, it could be, what do we
Well-
have, 4 lots or something that we,
Only 2 new ones. We divided lots.
yeah, so.
You know what I think we should do? We should take a look at, it is a 40B project, but in order to get a handle on it, I think I would like to recommend a site visit to the North Falmouth condominium development. They're building up on the side of the hill. It's in between Thomas B. Landers and
And 151,
And
just before the
151.
Rotary.
just before the Rotary.
Yeah,
There's some really, they're selling for $1 million.
that's
There-
the cheapest one.
Yeah, but we should go look at that. $1 million each side,
Yes,
so the buildings are $2 million.
Are these the ones near us?
Wild Harbor
just before your
condominium.
road.
Wild Harbor.
Have you
Yeah,
gone in them? They've had open houses, you can go in.
I have not gone in. I tried to get up there and they wouldn't let me up the road. I said, I'm actually here for the planning board. The guy said, I don't care, you're not
you
coming up
lied,
this
we don't have a
road.
role in that, you're
We don't-
talking your way
We don't
in
really
there.
care who you are.
I went on an open house day when they let you do it,
Oh,
and went in, the open one was up at the top of the hill.
yep, that was the first one they
And my
built.
first question was, oh, do they have a view? They're charging so much money. No, they don't have a view. And they're small, once you get inside. Did you go inside?
I haven't been inside yet, but I hear,
Small.
And they're very close together. The
The two near
ones,
the road,
right, and there's one going in right across the street.
yes, across from what appears to be a not big enough septic system. That will
I
smell nice.
know. Anyway, let me just one other thing. When I went online, I wanted to look at other communities who had done a conversion bylaw. Guess what the conversions are? Apartments to condominiums. Now, we don't fit into that because we don't have any. But when you look up, just go through Middlesex, go through whatever counties you want, because they're really not on the Cape, because the Cape never did lots of apartments. But that's what the conversion is, which makes perfect sense. You convert from an apartment to a condominium with restrictions of, I mean, it makes perfect sense.
what does that do for you? You still have the same amount of
Why
units.
would we want to do that?
Well, we
What we
can't,
want is
Charlotte,
more
because we
rentals.
don't have
Surprisingly,
apartments.
we do.
All
We
that
do
is
have
an exit
apartments.
strategy from the investor to having one big unit to selling off in pieces. That's just an exit strategy.
No, I
It doesn't
mean,
add more housing.
well, it does. It does, and it makes ownership, but it doesn't matter. I'm just saying, I think we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. So I would back off on my being against the single family, because I can tell you if it's not gonna pass. I like Jed's idea of incremental
Chip away.
Yeah,
way.
it's a better way to go.
Yep,
But I
agree.
think we
It
should
is
go look at
evident.
those duplexes and see if we like that idea as a group, because maybe,
I
maybe.
think we should be aware that there are a lot of ways to do duplexes.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I
just
mean,
one?
if we want, we could even throw in site design review if, if it comes before us for.
Well, yeah, do you recall when we actually did approve a design thing? And we said we
Yeah.
want to
Yeah,
get this illustrated and we want to publish it. We had it, we put it together, it was ready to go. And nothing happened. We got it, the town planner quit, a new town planner came, things have been changing and so forth, and it's still not published. And so, reading in the paper, Jill Neubauer had an article saying we should have an aesthetic site committee. And you go, oh, people are getting antsy about how things look. That could be two things. And she made the statement in there that we do not have any design requirements, which isn't true. We have unpublished ones, and we also, until they're
not in
published,
single family.
are covered by Cape Cod Commission's design. I think that we need to get those out so that we're not in that position.
The design guidelines for large-scale commercial, I think?
No, the design guidelines, there was the draft, needed to be, found the right illustrations, that at that time Union Studio was going to do.
But they never applied to single-family homes.
Yeah.
That's only for commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Design
Cape
reviews,
Cod Design doesn't. The ones we did.
no,
Yes, they did.
Yeah, it did.
no.
No, they were business.
It was all business, I'm absolutely positive.
Yeah, they were
Oh,
business.
because it was for zoning. It was
Yeah, it
the
was all
form-based
business.
zoning.
Yeah, form-based
It was all,
code.
it was all business, so I'm positive of that. We have never, and here's the thing, the only restrictions we have on residential houses is the historic district. It's the, remember, think about the house, we got the newspaper here, be careful what I say. There's some houses nearby that were built in a design that no one in the neighborhood liked. Okay, they're not too far from here. They're really high, but they fit all the zoning, but they're really modern, and the neighbors all hate them. And they said, we should never let them do it, and the editorials get written, you can't do this, you can't do that. Guess what? Our zoning doesn't allow for that. You have to let them do it. It's a basic right. We do not have design restrictions on single-family homes, period.
Okay, but Jill's article wasn't, the example that she was using
I gotta tell
were
one more
actually
thing.
40Bs.
Well, let me go back one
bypasses
other thing.
anyway.
We did have a design review committee, and it was made up of a bunch of architects and planner, and other people, and many architects were on it. And they, for a while, they put a lot of energy in, and it all worked. And then slowly but surely, they got less and less people, no one's really interested in it, and it became a rubber stamp. Okay, okay, okay. And the mistake they made is they did not take minutes. And when we were, I'm the one that brought it up, when we were going through the CVS project and on Davis Straits,
Wasn't that the sign committee, not
no,
design?
no, it was design. It got changed to sign.
Oh.
Because what happens was, Laura Moynihan was making the presentation, she was arguing with me, oh, the design review committee already approved, and I said, that's great, let's see the minutes. And she turned white as a ghost, and Brian almost died. And he looked at me, and next thing I know, the next week, Brian's proposing eliminate design review committee, because they had never taken any minutes, and everything they did was, could be
Could be challenged.
violating the open meeting law because they didn't
Yeah.
pay any attention to those rules. And the problem with it is, the town does not provide the staff, the recording, or to do it, so they decided to incorporate back into us because we already have the staff. I'm just giving you a little history. There was a design review committee, and this group killed it. And it was killed on the CVS project, and Brian pulled the plug on it because he kind of whispered, did he say it to, who was chairman at the time? It was Ralph?
Don't remember.
But he just said, oh my God, there's no more design review committee, because then he realized that everything they had ever done could be appealed.
Well, we
Okay,
were
so
also
that's-
getting flack.
That is the past. What the illustrations that Jill, I suppose, chose happened to be of 40B developments. We don't do them anyway.
That's right.
They bypass everything local. So.
It's a state law. The 40B specifically says that they do not have to do any of the state law, and no matter how many,
And therefore, her proposal for a local aesthetic design thing would not apply to the things that were aggravating her.
It won't work for a 40B.
Correct. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, I agree. The whole reason behind 40B is to supersede all local zoning.
Yep.
So you can make as many laws as you want, but it's not gonna affect 40B.
Here we are with a really, really nice short agenda.
Okay, it's a good discussion. I think we're
It
getting
is,
caught
yeah.
up. You've convinced me that I'm going to go along with this single-family thing that you're working on.
Make a note.
No.
Jim changed
I
his
know,
mind.
you know why? Because if we don't, we won't have anything.
I'd love to find places where we could start.
No, you've convinced me on that, so.
I really would.
We should have Jill come in. She made a wonderful presentation to the Affordable Housing Committee about design.
No doubt.
But is that a state law? Do we have, I don't think we have the right to go there, is my point. I would love to listen to Jill, I like her, but we can't do it. What she's proposing is not allowed by the state. She should be going up to Boston and proposing that, not here. It's not, we do not have the right to do that,
Because it's a 40B.
because it's a 40B.
But that wasn't her point. Her point was about an aesthetic review thing,
I
which
thought
we
it was
could
for
do.
40B.
No.
The buildings that were concerning her happened to be 40B developments. So even if she had the committee she wanted, it wouldn't change what was bothering her. However, if we had an aesthetic review design thing, it would affect whatever they decided it could affect locally that are not 40B.
So then you were saying that every single-family home would be subject to design review?
No, I don't think it's a great idea.
No, well,
I think that's what you just, I think
we already
that's
have
what Jill's
design review.
proposing.
That is Jill's proposal.
We already
Okay.
have design review with the stuff that comes before us.
But it's only business property.
Right, only
Right.
business properties.
Which is fine. John, did you want to say
I'm
something?
sorry.
I do. This evening, we had on our agenda, discussion and decision. And we had a group of abutters here that wanted to talk this evening. We also had the applicant that spent about 45 minutes talking to us. I need a clarification on what we're supposed to do here. Was it the discussion between ourselves, or is it discussion with anyone that comes to the podium? Is it applicant-only discussion in our board?
I
I
read
need to
discussion
understand
to
what-
mean, not the public, but the board and the applicant. What is the rule?
It really is up to the chair. And you also can make a determination, that's my understanding, when you have a discussion item, to allow for public comment during that discussion item. Now, it's complicated in the example that John's bringing up, because when we were forming the agenda, we were under the impression that the board was going to be ready for a decision. And after the agenda was published, we received, within, I don't know how many days, a revised site plan, which then created complications. So it's a little murky. But to answer the question directly, with a discussion item, my understanding is it's up to the chair to decide whether or not you want to hear public comment.
So the chair could ask the board, do they want to hear public comment? Is that
Correct.
right?
Or take testimony from the applicant.
Could they?
Or it could be either or. Either take testimony from the public or the applicant, or no testimony at all.
I would say it's
Wouldn't the
good,
appropriate way to be reopen the hearing?
but again,
You might not need to.
I don't know.
the hearing is only for the special permit. Technically, site plan review is a public meeting. There is no public hearing for that. In fact, we're going to be bringing forward some modifications to your rules and regulations, because right now your rules and regs are in conflict with the zoning bylaw, but we'll get into that at another date. But site plan review is a public meeting. It stays open until you read the decision into the record.
Interesting.
So you can technically take public comment during that public meeting. It's an open public meeting. Because the agenda said discussion/decision, that sort of gives the chair the ability to make a decision on whether or not you're going to take testimony from the applicant and/or the abutters. I think it's good practice if the applicant, in this case, suggested changes and there was discussion with an applicant. I think it's good practice to also have a discussion with the abutters, because you're giving one person the ability to discuss the project. You really should be taking comments from abutters who may have concerns.
Okay, I misunderstood it. I thought when it said discussion, it was just the board and the applicant. I didn't realize that, so that's a change. And if it's up to the chair and I'm the chair, I'd rather have it be, is there anyone on the board who would like to have the public part of this discussion. So,
I think if you're gonna hear from one, you should hear from the other.
Yeah.
Or not hear from either one.
okay,
That's my feeling.
And their
Right.
recourse would be to appeal our decision,
Right.
correct?
Yeah, they definitely have recourse, they
Yeah.
can appeal
I
it.
mean, so when they're talking about
By
their
whom are you
lawyer,
saying appeal? Who are you saying, the abutters or
the
the applicant?
abutters could appeal our decision.
They can appeal, through site plan review, they can appeal the building permit decision by the building commissioner.
Okay, so it would be after us then?
Correct.
So, okay.
Correct.
So them sending lawyers and letters to us really isn't the place to go with it.
Well, it is part of the file, and it's, technically, testimony, if you want to call it that, or correspondence from abutters. And you take that throughout the process for every application for site plan review.
Yeah.
And it's up to the board to consider whether or not that correspondence has merit, and if you want to consider the comments within it. And so I don't see the harm in listening and reading the correspondence, but
No, I just think that they're under the impression that if they get a lawyer to come and comment, that it somehow can stop our decision. Whereas that's wrong, that's incorrect.
right, so stopping your decision, I think, is probably not possible.
Right.
But perhaps influencing your decision, that could be possible.
if they're going to speak, they can influence the decision as long as we know that it's not out of order for them to be speaking. I
Right.
thought it was out of order.
And again, it's really up to the chair to decide, especially in a discussion element, because the discussion is meant to be between the board. And so, carefully, we tried to put together the agenda, and, we can certainly seek town council's input on it. But how do we craft an agenda so that it allows for not only the applicant to speak, but also others, and perhaps a decision at the end of that? Slashes upon slashes, right?
Yeah.
I think the problem is when the applicant submits a whole bunch of data after the hearing's closed.
Yes,
That
that
is,
is
that is what
correct.
caused this whole
But
thing.
here's a problem. It's not a hearing. It at
Well-
no point is a
I thought
hearing.
it was a hearing.
So,
No,
so
no, you
we,
didn't, listen.
so we do, go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's for site
Ryan used to
plan
give me
re-
signals when there's a hearing, he'd go like this.
Oh, that's good, I like that.
if it's site
He
plan-
did, he'd look at me, this is a hearing.
But if it's site plan review, it's not a hearing. That's what Jed said. It's a discussion
So
all
it's
the
public
way,
comment on
all
the
the
site plan
way
review.
until we actually make a decision.
So I guess we need new hand
So
signals.
you and I were both off.
Right, I'll
We
just
probably
tuck my
should be-
tie.
Yeah, we probably should be clear. We'll blame the town planner for not giving us good direction. on it.
Perfect,
Hearing, discussion,
right.
Obviously, we need to clean this up. We're messing
All
this up.
over,
yeah.
go home.
Yeah,
Safe.
right, right.
So that's why I was confused tonight.
Yeah, I get confused.
It was confusing.
Wrong signal.
You're not the only
What
one.
would happen if we didn't allow that?
Didn't allow what?
Thunder
Them to
and
come in with
lightning.
new plans, landscaping plans, changing the parking site after we've already had a public discussion, a public hearing on it,
Yeah, so, I mean,
or site plan review, whatever we call it.
it remains open, right? It essentially remains open until you, the board, decide that it's closed, meaning you are satisfied that the site plans and all the plans that they are proposing meet the requirements, and then you direct us as staff to draft a positive motion. That's the signal that this process is coming to an end. The complication in this case is that there was we drafted a public, or a draft decision, we started to, and then there was revisions to the plan, so it became murky.
Very murky,
you will.
but it was a teachable moment. We've all learned. So returning to the agenda,
Oh, yeah.
so that we can at some point return to our homes. We now come to committee reports. Oh, I want to wrap up conversion of dwelling discussion. It sounded like at the end of it, what we're really doing is agreeing with Jed to take an incremental approach and change the date, probably to 2013.
2013?
2013? That would be the
Big
10 years,
improvement.
Yeah.
the 10 years that we discussed before, and let it go at that for this round.
How about a 10% increase in size?
No, we're just sticking with the
No,
date.
let's just
Okay,
do the
no
date.
argument? I
Just do
just,
the
one
date.
step,
Okay, so strike the
Sticking with the
10%. Okay.
Okay, we ready then to move on?
Yes.
Good. Committee reports? No? Planning Department report.
I have nothing other than, we We were hoping to hold a recodification working group meeting this week. Unfortunately, things have been just incredibly busy, so we're going to have to put that off until July. But we do need to start making some final decisions about fall town meeting. So
Right, we do.
I'm going to be working hard on that this next week to make sure that we're ready to go.
Well, there's certainly a couple coming off the Mr. Cod discussion.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Can I give a quick report?
Please.
So CPC, we haven't had a meeting, our next meeting is in July, but I'm also on the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund Committee through CPC, through the Planning Board. And we had an applicant this week, we had a meeting. Falmouth Housing Trust has an opportunity to purchase a home that a couple are selling to them at a much reduced price, so they can go to a family that meets the 120% income guideline. And I'm saying this publicly because these people are getting a tax break for
Right.
selling the house at a reduced price to the Falmouth Housing Trust to go to affordable housing family.
Okay,
It's a
Falmouth
novel idea, and it's a great idea, so.
Housing Trust is which among the 5 ones?
Falmouth Housing Trust?
Is that the one whose mission is single-family homes for?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
For
That's correct.
purchase.
Is that,
So a couple have
ownership.
offered to sell them their house for
is that
about,
Clark's operation, is that what?
no,
Okay.
for about $200,000 under the market rate.
It's a Helmuth Trust, okay, that's
Wow.
the
And
people
it-
we gave Oddfellows to? We sold Oddfellows to?
I wasn't here.
I'm trying to think of who this group is.
The Falmouth Trust is Karen Bissonette, and it's for ownership. It's not rental. Strictly ownership.
So
So
it's taking money from, well, never mind. Just,
the
that's good
point is,
information, John.
a
Thank
family
you.
is selling their house at about a $200,000 reduced rate so that Karen's group can sell it to an affordable housing family.
And that's something I've been trying to promote is some of these housing entities shouldn't be building brand-new houses. They should be buying existing stock, because it does a number of things by taking existing stock out of the market for someone to come in and tear it down, put up some McMansion.
Well, the couple's gonna get a tax credit.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not getting money, they're getting a tax credit. It's not the same.
Right.
Mhm.
And it's a great idea.
Yeah.
And they're hoping that more people in the community will do that in the future.
Yeah.
So that's my
Sounds
committee
good.
report.
Okay, good.
Well, that would look good in the paper.
Of course you are.
Thank you. Okay. Any other reports? In that case, is there any other business that you'd like to raise?
Do you have correspondence there?
I didn't see any.
I don't know what that is.
There is some
Oh.
correspondence, yeah.
Wait,
Buzzards Bay Coalition.
this is a copy of the 2022 State of Buzzards Bay Report for your members from Mark Rasmussen. And I assume that you all have copies of that you can read. And they're right here. There aren't enough copies for everybody. Who would like one?
It's
What
okay.
is that?
I'll take one.
State of Buzzards Bay report.
Buzzards Bay Report? You might get it at your house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Came up
it'll be
with-
here after the meeting if you want it. And
I'm assuming it's likely online as well.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Okay.
In which case, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.